community of 9,000 or 10,000 people, and our total consumptive use of power was around 10 megawatts. And megawatts, that's 1,000 kilowatt hours of load at any given time. So when we say we're using 10 megawatts, that means every day about 10 megawatts of power were used in Prineville. And that's when we had Contact Lumber, Clear Pine running. I was up at American Pine running, 400 or 500 people up there. Bob, you had 400 or 500 people. Consolidated was running Pioneer Cut Stock, and the grocery stores, and we were about 10 megawatts. When Facebook came, they built a substation for 120 megawatts. So 12 times as much. Now, keep in mind that when people say, oh, the data centers are taking all our power, that's not right. We didn't have 120 megawatts of power in Prineville. What we did have, though, is 3 major BPA lines running through our county, delivering power to our friends in California. And we had a large footprint of a substation called Ponderosa out by Weibel Corner that could be developed where we could offload big power that could then in turn be directed up on top of our hill by the airport to the data centers. And that's exactly what happened. And it was tens of millions of dollars to upgrade the Ponderosa substation to be able to download power off that major transmission line. Now, when we went to our utilities, and both Pacific Power and Central Electric Co-op serve the general area up there by the airport where the data centers are going, and Facebook came in and said, we need power, and we need power by this amount of time. And we worked with our utilities, and we worked with BPA, and then we had Apple come in and say, well, we want some power too, and it's a lot. And BPA said, yeah, we'll get it to you, but it might take us 3 or 4 years. And that's where Betty and the council and the county court folks, we got a hold of our federal delegation, Senator Wyden, Senator Merkley, and Congressman Walden. And we said, that won't stand. We got to have it faster than that to get these people to come invest here. And we went to work real hard on that and got an expedited upgrade to Ponderosa, which was basically the equipment that Facebook and Apple paid for, but BPA installed to make that download of this big power. So Prineville didn't have 200 megawatts of extra power stranded in our community. We had the usage of 10 or 12, and we needed to have these upgrades done to the substation. At the same time, we said to BPA, okay, well, we think we can grow this business and we're going to need more power. And they said, hey, you know what, don't worry, we've got about 400 megawatts in inventory for you with this upgrade, and you're going to be fine. And Betty and I and the council and Eric Klon, we all said, great, we're in great shape.
That was in 2012.
That was in 2012.
Yeah.
What we didn't know is between 2012 and about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, when Apple asked for additional power for their anticipated expansion, that a couple of things happened. And remember I told you that power that you see on the 3 major transmission line, that's going to California. So big power is running through here, and they had 2 things happen to them that they didn't make us aware of. The first thing was there's about 100 megawatts of power in a cogen thermal, a combination cogeneration wood products, thermal energy down in Klamath County that was going to come online and feed into the transmission lines on its way to California. So less would have to come through our area. The second thing was they had some outdated capacitors up at Bake Oven between here and the gorge that became outdated, and they just shut them off, and that affected the capacity constraints or capacity available and how much load they could put on those lines, and they just turned them off. So we lost 100 because the new power didn't come on in Klamath, and we lost another 100 or 150 because they didn't replace these capacitors, and they didn't bother to tell us. So when
we didn't bother to ask.
And we didn't bother to ask, so shame on us. That's a great point.
Yeah.
So when Apple wanted this extra power, they said, oh, sure, we can get it, but it might take us 4 or 5 years. And Apple said, well, that's not going to work for us. We'll go build somewhere else. So we went to work on that. So here's the really good news. So what we came to terms with, when I say we, the city, the county, Pacific Power, Central Electric Co-op, Bonneville Power Administration, we were able to convince them, and having Greg Walden on
in the House.
Energy and Natural Resource Committee really helped, because he's in essence the chairman of that, who basically is the boss of Elliott, I think Elliott's last name, the head of EPA, and put a lot of pressure on him. And so what they came up with is a two-phase scenario. One is updated capacitors, which should have been done, in our opinion, a couple years ago. That's gonna happen in the next year. So by next June, there'll be another roughly 315 megawatts of capacity available. Beyond that time, in the next 18 months beyond June of 18, there's they call it RAS, which is a remedial action scheme, which basically is, and I don't understand all this, but basically it's a computer controlled or kind of an algorithm that optimize power. Because remember, we have baseload power, we have solar power, we have wind power, hydropower, coal power, and mixing all these together based on load demand is a real art. And so they have basically an optimization model, the computer program that optimizes that load so that they can put more load onto the transmission lines. That's another 200 and some, giving a total about 585 megawatts of power. That sounds great, and we all kind of took a sigh of relief and thought, well, this is fantastic, we're in great shape. But what I'm here to tell you is these data centers are the community of data center users. We know we have Apple, we know we have Facebook. We believe that there are other big name people that are very interested in our community. And you know, we're not allowed to talk about it, and I really don't know specific names, but what I can tell you is there's other people actively interested in our community to invest here, besides the ones that we have here now, Apple and Facebook. They all use the code names and everything, and they're asking for 100 megawatts, 200 megawatts, and so forth. So this 585 megawatts could go away very, very quickly. And what that leaves us with is the updates that I spoke about that are going to come online in the next couple years to satisfy what's already in queue are going to be used up. Then they're going to have to be, then the BPA will have to be looking at constructing a new line between the Gorge and Prineville. And that could be a 5 or 6 or 8 year project. And that's not horrible. We're not, unlike a lot of communities, that they would be alternative to us for somebody like a Facebook or an Apple or data center to build that, but we want to get that process started now. And so that's what the council and myself and the rest of the team are working on, is making sure that we stay in communication with Bonneville Power, we keep them aware of the interest level, and make sure that we're a high probability user of big blocks of electricity going forward, and try to get an expedited review of getting started on building what would be a fourth line between the Gorge, where the big power is, to our community. Now, one of the things I want to talk about a little bit is the renewables. So let's talk about solar. Prineville's going to have the largest solar farms in the state. And if you go up George Milliken about 5 or 6 miles, Betty and I've been there, about 320 acres. It's magnificent. SunPower's putting that in. But here's where I want to stop and take a pause. We know, I bet everybody in this room, and if you don't, I'm here to tell you, we have people that worked with me in the millwork industry that are working at Apple or working at Facebook. When I go up there, without fail, I see people that what I would call associates or team members that used to work with me in forest products. The last time I was at Facebook, I saw 2 young Hispanic girls that during their high school years worked for my wife at Subway. Now they have a full-time benefited food service job at Facebook. Fantastic. Betty and I traveled to look at the new solar array. We drive in there with the SunPower representatives and a representative from Iberdrola Renewables. We go to the construction, temporary construction building, walk in. This nice looking young man greets us. I go, he looks familiar. And I said to Betty, we know, that's Tyler Tooley. So I said to Tyler, what are you doing? I thought you were going to Oregon State. Well, I'm almost done with Oregon State, but now I'm the logistics and supply chain manager for SunPower. So here's a young man, went up through the ranks at Crook County School District, kindergarten through high school, fantastic athlete, went on to Oregon State. He's back in his hometown, not working for the data centers, but now working for an energy company that's here because we brought the data centers in. I want to go back to Roger Hudspeth just for a minute. When your family built that big mill up on the hill, we employed a lot of people, didn't we? I was one of them. It was great. A lot of family wage jobs. But what else did we have? We had loggers, we had fluid, the materials, fuelers, oils, hydraulic fluid. We've got truck mechanics, heister mechanics, loggers, logging shops. All the ancillary jobs that went along with that sawmill that maybe had a couple hundred people up there at its peak, but probably had a couple hundred people in other good paying jobs supporting that operation. And it's fantastic to me to see the same phenomenon happening with the data centers. Whereas the data centers are here, there's a couple hundred people being employed at Facebook, a couple hundred people being employed at Apple, but there's a lot more people being employed at SunPower, Oaf Electric, diesel mechanics for their backup generation, landscape maintenance, security. Mike's fencing, I went to school with Mike Groves at Mike's Fencing. He's doing very well with the fencing jobs he's had up at both Facebook, Apple, and SunPower. So I think pulling all this together is really important, and power is a big part of it. And we are in a pretty good spot right now. We do have the opportunity to continue to be able to supply the power for additional investment here. We need to keep our foot on the gas with BPA through our federal delegation, our state legislators, to make sure that BPA puts us in their queue for capital investment so we get that additional capacity online here in the next 4 or 5 years.
1, 2, 3, 4.